Alright, I have quite a game for you. Hopefully the recording does not bug out. Of course, if it does, you probably won't end up seeing this video. I've made a couple of temporary changes to Oloro. One of them is that I took out Command Tower and I put an extra island in there. And the reason is that currently Command Tower is bugged and it's not tapping for any mana at all on Magic Online. But what's interesting is that I've been kind of happy about having 5 islands, and I might end up, when Command Tower gets fixed, putting it back into the deck and replacing the Godless Shrine. I might be okay to run, to just have an extra island in place of that and have the 5 basics. I really like having 5 basics a lot, so we'll see what happens there. And then the other thing I did was I took out the 2 Delve cards temporarily. I put in Dissolve back into the deck, and I put a card I haven't used in a long time, but I put Stroke of Genius in there. The thing about Stroke of Genius just is that it rewards you for doing what you're trying to do, which is generate lots of mana. The Delve cards reward you for doing something you're not really trying to do, which is put a lot of cards in your graveyard. That happens over the course of a game, but I don't know. Stroke and the other cards maybe none of them are right. I'm not sure. Still fiddling around with, the slots in the deck, and, we'll see. But for now, that's what I put in there. And Dissolve, I just felt like I just wanted like one more counter spell, and the fact that it has a scry on it's kind of nice. So let's move on to our game history here. But, like I said, I try to do different things, and I'm trying to fill out the exact perfect scenarios, so I don't know. And then today I had like unbelievably bad luck with mulligans and mana screw like all day, way worse than anything I'm used to seeing, which is weird because I've actually gone up a land and have more search cards, but it was just like situations where I would just mulligan to death and then never recover, and it's kind of frustrating. But I suppose that has to happen some of the time, I guess. Anyhow, the game I want to show you is this one against Anywhere Sounds Nice. And my opponent is playing Tasigur. And because I've been mulliganing all day long, I had this hand that has a first turn play and is completely bonkers if I can get a second mana source. And I decide I'm going to keep it, even though I probably could mulligan into a better hand, but it's so easy for this hand to become amazing. I'm just going to keep it, and we're going to see what happens against Tasigur. And I am, of course, playing Oloro. Okay. So my opponent wins the dice roll, also, to make matters worse, and gets a first turn scry effect. I draw Mana Drain, which makes this hand even more crazy if I find a mana. I don't, but I do find Swords of Pasha, so I take out his bird right away just because, it's basically a mox, a flying mana fixer, and what does my opponent get? He gets a Soul Ring. So, okay, great. And he had to have drawn it off the top, because last turn he played the bird and didn't play the Soul Ring. And then he uses the Soul Ring to cast Nature's Lore, so I'm losing this game pretty hard right now. I figured he'd just play his commander here and then just take over the game, but he continues developing, which isn't crazy. And then that last thing he played when he tapped 2 mana, I have no idea. Did he cycle? I actually don't know why he tapped 2 mana right there. But anyway, I finally draw Preordain. So this is a weird thing. I'm looking at his commander thinking, well, if he delves it into play, I'm going to want to like end a turn and bounce it back to his hand, and then on my turn, a Mana Drain on Tasigur. Although its delve cost makes it cheap, the Mana Drain would be a huge reward. So I was thinking I'm going to take Strand, of course, but I might put Rift into my hand. And then I just decided that because he hasn't been playing his commander, I'm gonna take a risk here and like bank on him continuing not to play Tasigur. But if he doesn't follow with the plan that I think he might do, then the backup is Mana Drain is at the next opportunity, and vindicate Tasigur and deal with it that way. I also have the option where if he somehow doesn't do anything, I could sack the map and then play Ancient Tomb and cast Dimer's Signet, and then I'm in really good shape from there. But he plays Rhystic Study, and it's a card that's only good early and only good when your opponent's mana screwed, but oh man, is that card frustrating to play against when you're mana screwed, which I am, and so it goes. But I'm not going to give up because it's not my nature. So I figure, if he goes for his, now I have to discard here, and I decide I'm going to throw away Shackles because Shackles doesn't look super good against him. It looks like he's got a lot of cards. I mean, other than birds, which makes sense for almost any deck that's running green, it doesn't look like he's playing a lot of creatures. And Shackles is a long way off from stealing a Tasigur, so I throw that away. If he does play his commander here, I plan to mana drain it because he'll get a card off Rhystic Study, but I'll get 6 mana and prevent a Tasigur. So that seems pretty like a pretty reasonable exchange. Actually, kind of helps me out and does nothing, so I sack the map, waiting to see what that means. Meanwhile, I'm going to fetch Ancient Tomb. Not as good as I had wanted it to be, of course, because the Rhystic Study is slowing me down. I'm not going to go Tomb into Signet here, and then sit on 3 mana and a counter spell and return Impulse and all that good stuff. Instead, I'm going to do nothing. But at least, and then I have to discard, and I kind of regretted this later, but I decide that I need Vindicate because I really want to get Rhystic Study off the table. Impulse lets me continue to dig for mana. Copy Artifact has a great target in Sol Ring. I just can't really afford to play it right now because I need to sit on mana drain counter. I'm not discarding my 2 mana defenses. And Signet, I really want to get on the table. The Future Sight just has way more impact than a Dark Confidant. Plus, it may be the case that he's got 4 cards in hand because he's holding creature removal. So, for all those reasons, I discard the Confidant. I do regret it later a bit, as you'll probably end up seeing here. And then he plays Edric, and this is where I regret the Dark Confidant and Shackles going away, because either of them might have been pretty good against this guy. The problem is, what do I do here? If I counter Edric, I can't mana drain his commander, and I think his commander is a worse threat. So I think what I'm going to have to do is let it go and dig for more mana with Impulse, or mana drain if he plays his commander. He does not, so I'm going to Impulse. Paying Rhystic Study tax. And my options are here. Weirdly enough, the workshop into Diner's Signet plan is not a bad one. Usually Sol Ring is almost always the answer, but in this weird situation where with this Rhystic and stuff, I actually thought about the shop, but in the end I came to the conclusion that the Sol Ring would just have to do. So I clear my attack phase out, play my Sol Ring, which I can play off of the Ancient Tombs. Good thing I got Tomb and not some other land. And then again, I'm stifled here. If I copy Artifact the Sol Ring, then I don't have blue mana for a counterspell. I play Signet and pay 1, then I don't have 2 blue for counter. If I play Signet and don't pay, then I'm giving him a card. If I play Lantern and don't pay, I'm giving him a card. And if I do pay, I can't counterspell. So I'm pretty much damned if I do, damned if I don't here, so I decide I won't. Now he plays Ashiok. This is not a card that I really want to mana drain, but I do have to counter it, and with Edric pressuring me, I feel like, okay, I need to get some mana and try to accelerate. I'm going to go ahead and play the mana drain now. And sad day for me, my opponent actually has a counterspell, which also bounces Prairie Stream. It's Silengar's command, so he chooses counter target non-creature, bounce target permanent. So my smart idea to get the Prairie Stream earlier, because it would come into play tapped when I didn't need it, is now going to punish me slightly. Also, my opponent gets to use Ashiok. He hits Tax, Stroke, and he hits Phyrexian Metamorph. So those are gone. Plus he gets to draw off to Edric, but he did tap out. And that means I get to make the awesome monster play of copy Artifact of Sol Ring and cast Chromatic Lantern and say go. Which is not very exciting, and especially when my opponent's got Tasigur in his deck. He Ashioks me again and takes Demonic Tutor and a Strip Mine, so no strip blocks for him, plus DT, gone, and a Mana Leak. I'm more concerned about the other 2 cards. Primarily, at this point, the Demonic Tutor. Losing that sucks. And he gets a draw off of Edric, and with Sensei's Divining Top, which he played that turn, he can now draw target card, basically. And I'm bricking over here on Cards that would normally be good, but aren't good because Ashok's in play, so I figure let's try to get it out of play. Uh, except, except Ristic Study, sorry, cards that, I said Ashok, I meant Ristic Study. Cards that would normally be good, but aren't because Ristic Study's in play. Like this, like all the search, all the counters in the world, hard to play when they're constantly brain geysering your opponent, so I go for Heuristic Study to remove I go for Vindicate to remove the Heuristic Study. And I really probably should have played Dimer Signet prior to this and filtered the mana through in order to Vindicate and left some blue in my pool. But I don't. And he responds with Dig through time. So kind of a tough call here. If I let the Dig go, like if I counter the Dig through time, and boy, don't I wish that I had played Counterspell last turn and then Mana Drain Dig this turn. But if I counter the Dig through time, he's still going to have Sensei's Divining Top Edric combo going where he's able to draw so many cards that he's probably going to bury me. So the fact that he's like getting target cards, two cards, it doesn't really change the equation that much. It doesn't change the fact that he's already drawing 2 extra cards per turn. It does give him some quality cards, and it does let him see new ones with the top. But if I don't counter it here, and Vindicate resolves, then I can play my Dimer Signet and have more mana for future turns. But I also have a counterspell ready to go, and he's about to untap with a lot of cards. And I figured that's a lot better than just tapping out on my turn and losing to whatever he gets off of Edric plus Sensei's Divining Top. So I let the Dig Through Time resolve. He doesn't have Force of Will or anything, so I'm able to play Dimer Signet and then pass. And the nice thing here would be if he just didn't do much. And of course, we knew he was going to top, but I mean, other than that, he doesn't do anything. If he tries to play reactively, then I get to Thirst at the end of this turn. Small chance of that with all the mana he has. He's going for Pernicious Deed. Clearly, if Deed resolves and he blows it, Deed doesn't actually kill Planeswalkers. It kills everything but artifact creatures, enchantments. So if he blows the Deed for 3, he can basically wipe my mana base at a small cost of Edric, after he attacks, of course, and he'll get to keep Ashiok. Basically, I lose the game. So it was a good thing I didn't counter Dig, but I have to counter Deed and this better resolve. Luckily, it does. So he pluses up Ashiok and he hits Hallowed Fountain, Watery Grave, and Island, which, you know, I wouldn't mind some extra mana, but I think triple lands right there is actually not bad for me at all. He gets another card off Edric. He gets to play Intuition. I'm guessing this is the card he took. It's hard to say. And he presents me with these 3 piles: Witness, Liliana, or Vorinclex. Well, Vorinclex is, requires him to tap out, and while it is an effect that kind of sucks, for me, it's a very slow, expensive effect for him to play, and it's one I can live with, so that's the one I'm going to give him with Intuition. Whereas Witness for Deed and Liliana to get Witness, to get Deed, that's probably not good. So, and he has Tasigur. So he exiles a few cards. He's still got Witness, Deed, and Liliana, though. And I rip a Necro. Like, wow. How lucky for me. So this means, so first of all, I'm thinking, I want to slam Necro here, but the problem is, like, I'm going to die to Ashiok soon. Edric and Tasigur are both hitting me and drawing him basically 3 cards per turn if he count his draw phase. Or if he activates Tasigur, 4 cards, etc. That's way too many cards. I can't possibly win that game, even with the Necro, I don't think. So I'm going to try to stall. Luckily, I put this on the bottom early, so he didn't hit it with Ashiok. I just Rift. Now, the Rift isn't super effective against him, but it does buy some time. Certainly makes playing the Vorinclex that I know he has in his hand not a great proposition for him. So we know Sol Ring's going to come back down, but after that, let's see. So Edric comes down. Ashiok comes down, but it's reset. I have more time. I don't just auto lose. He plays top. He uses Ashiok and he hits City of Brass, Arid Mesa, Fabricate. And also that cleared out, by the way, the Phyrexian Metamorph that was trapped under the Ashiok that he might have been able to use because he kept plussing up Ashiok and he never minused. And that could be a thing. So I guess you could look at the Rift as not entirely card disadvantage. It did generate a card in that way, but it also generated 2 cards because he didn't draw 2 cards off Edric and Tasigur. So there's the other new card in the deck. But the other reason for all that was that I wanted him to tap out again so I could make the following play on this turn, which is Future Sight Necro, because that combo is really good. I luck out in playing the Future Sight because there's a Coalition Relic and I have Ancient Tomb untapped. And I tap my mana just to make sure that I have done the math correctly. And I play Coalition Relic, and then even further luck out in the sense that I actually hit a land here, which is great. There's a Mind Twist waiting for me, so I can use that later. And I start to tap to play Necro, and then I think, well, do I want to rather just sit on Dissolve? And I don't really see a path to victory where I try to dissolve a Tasigur. He can cast it and then recast it, and then what happens? I have my window now, and we're pretty sure he doesn't have a counterspell because if he did, he would have stopped Future Sight. It's a pretty good turn also, when Future Sight is your bait card. So I start necroing, but as I'm doing this, pay attention to my library because I can play the cards on the top of my library. So I'm actually digging. Okay, so there's Humility, which has some value. And then I decide, you know what, I don't want to actually dig too deep because, well, first I do have to kind of pay attention to my life total, but also he has Ashiok, and I want to put junk on the top of my deck for him to target with that thing, not quality cards. So I go ahead and just take the 8 cards that I necroed for, or 7 cards I necroed for, and I discard one of the talismans, I think. Use his top, and yeah, I throw away a talisman and a tithe. Because I'm not going to cast, I'm going to charge Relic, I'm not going to cast Tithe, I'm hoping to get Crucible down and play lands that way. Of course, this is all exiled over here. Graveyard, exiled, his stuff. Lots to keep track of. And now we have Necro exiled stuff. So he then Ashocks and takes Seal of Cleansing, Grim Monolith, and Fact or Fiction, cards that I am fine with, and look what he puts on top. Imperial Seal is fantastic, because with Future Sight, that's Demonic Tutor for half the cost. However, he gets to play Animate Dead, and he animates Eternal Witness, and we know what a Witness is going to get, right? It's going to go get Deed. He uses a mana, so that was nice. Like, I don't know if he needed the mana for anything else, but he messes around the top a little bit before casting the Deed, which I don't agree with. He attacks me with Edric, which I do agree with, but maybe that's why he topped. Maybe he was just digging for a counterspell. In fact, maybe he has a counterspell. So he's trying to figure out how to do his mana correctly, and finally he settles on this. So there's a Deed on the stack, and I have to decide, like, does a Deed win the game for him now? It did earlier, but a Deed here for 3. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. If he Deeds for less than 3, then Necro's still in play, and I'll be able to use Necro Future Sight and Imperial Seal and all the other stuff that's going on to actually go get Will, and then just will all the artifacts back into play along with whatever else I want to do. If he Deeds for less than 3. If he Deeds for 3, then Edric and Eternal Witness die, but Ashok's still in play. However, I lose the Necro and a bunch of mana. I do, on the other hand, get to activate Necro as much as I want before it resolves, and those cards will still go into my hand even though the Necropotence is dead. So I was thinking about what to do here, and what I decided was this. I'm going to Necro and try to find Mystical Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, or Force of Will. Because if I can find any of those cards, then what I can do is I could Mystical, Vampiric, or Vampiric in response to this Deed, and put Force of Will on the top of my deck, and then play it off the top of Future Sight. So I've got 52 cards, and 3 of them are successes, and I have 28 life to work with. So I'm going to push it as far as I can, and if I don't get one of those 3 cards, then would have wanted to necro anyway. So I'll stop at a reasonable point, and then I'm gonna have to try to win with by recurring using Yawgmoth's Will. So I start necroing in response. There's tutelage, we don't want that. Muddle doesn't do it. Terminus not going to help right now. Signet, nope. Marsh Flats is no good. Orsa Will, and I haven't paid all that much life at all, and I've got one card. I might have wanted to hold Thirst if Terminus were still in the deck, but since I know that it's in my Necroed pile, I'm not going to need a card like that to trigger Terminus, so I'm just going to force with Thirst. And for the second time this game, probably Lethal Deed has been stopped. And then he gets to play Birthing Pod. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to push it a little further because I'd really like to see, Spell Pierce here, and I could play Spell Pierce on Pod because he didn't pay life, and I could counter it. So I'm going to dig a little further, but I don't want to go too far. So I push it just a bit. I see Teeth Mystical. I see Enlightened Tutor, and I can play it off the top, so I decide, all right, that's as far as I'm going to go, and let's see what he pods for, and then maybe I'll, like, Enlightened Tutor in response and do something about whatever he gets. So we've got 10 cards set aside with Necro right now. He pods away the Witness, and he goes and gets Solemn Simulacrum. This is awesome for me because it's completely useless. Like, at this stage in the game, does nothing. So we're real happy about that. My turn. So I actually take, for one of the few exceptions to the rule of always take blue, take white mana here. Go ahead and cast myself a Thran Dynamo. Cast Humility using the white mana first, just to see what he does. If he had a Force of Will, he might have played it there, and I wanted to test the waters. I mean, I had Dissolve to fight over it, but I want to know how much mana I can spend this turn. So I go ahead and Enlighten Tutor. Orb. He's all tapped out, and I cast Winter Orb. There's a Mystical Tutor right there. So I'm going to be able to Mystical Tutor, and he scoops. So I was going to be able to Mystical Tutor right there for Yawgmoth's Will, then set it aside with Necro, and then keep paying life in order to find myself a land, and put the land into play, and then end the turn. He would have been able to do some damage to me. He would have gotten to Ashiok, but the problem for him is he was trapped under the Orb Humility combo, and on the next turn, I have a ton of mana coming, and then I get to Yawgmoth's Will, and then he loses. And I guess because he figured out what was going to happen, or maybe just because Orb Humility was too potent, he scoops up without waiting to see what I'm going to do, and I won an almost impossible game. And I hope you enjoyed watching the game. And I'll continue to fiddle around with cards in this deck. Again, Stroke, it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, it was a time when this card had its time. I just don't know if its time is still now, or if it's not the card. So we'll keep messing around with that and other things like maybe Dissolve or whatever, and I'll let you know maybe in the next video what I figured out. Hopefully. All right. Well, that's all I've got. And I will say thanks for watching, but I'll also throw in that this could be, if I don't need the card drawing, this could actually be the Monk's Opal slot that I've been looking for. So there is that possibility. And then I just try to use cards like Dissolve and stuff, dig my way down to Necro or Future Sight, and just win without worrying about the Delve cards that I'm not using, or card drawers like Stroke. That could be it. Unfortunately, I don't have the money for a Monk, so someone else will have to test that for me. And that's all I have. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.